Princess Zara stood before the golden podium in the great hall of the Galactic Council. Thousands of beings from across 12 star systems watched her every move. The crystal walls of the chamber reflected light from 3 different suns, casting rainbow patterns across the assembled crowd. She wore the traditional blue robes of her people, the Valdris, with silver threading that marked her as royal blood. Her purple skin gleamed under the lights, and her forearms moved gracefully as she prepared to speak. Today was supposed to be a day of celebration. Zara had spent 3 years working on new legal reforms that would make the justice system fairer for all species in the Empire. The Galactic Judiciary Council had ruled the Empire for 300 years, without major problems. Everyone believed it was perfect. Everyone trusted it completely. Zara began her speech about the new laws. She spoke about helping poor planets get better legal representation. She talked about making sure small crimes did not get huge punishments. The crowd listened politely, but she could see some council members looking bored. Chancellor Vex, her father's chief advisor, kept checking his datapad instead of paying attention. After the ceremony, Zara walked through the palace corridors feeling proud but tired. She had worked so hard on these reforms. Her father, Emperor Corvash, had barely looked at her during the presentation. He seemed more interested in talking to Chancellor Vex about something private. This made Zara feel sad, but she pushed the feeling away. 3 days later, strange news began reaching the palace. A known criminal named Drac, the Destroyer, had been set free by the courts. His crimes included destroying 2 mining stations and killing 47 workers. The official reason given was lack of evidence, but everyone knew he was guilty. The families of the dead workers were angry and confused. On the same day, a peaceful farmer named Kel, from the Outer Rim, was sentenced to life in prison for disturbing the peace. His only crime was asking questions about why his planet's taxes had gone up by 300%. The punishment made no sense at all. Zara brought these cases to Commander Thane, the head of royal security. Thane was an old soldier who had served her family for 30 years. His gray hair and scarred face showed his long service. He listened to her concerns with worry in his green eyes. "Princess, I have heard similar stories from other planets," Thane said quietly. "Good people getting harsh punishments while criminals walk free. Something is very wrong with our legal system." Zara decided to investigate. She used her royal access codes to look at court records from the past 6 months. What she found made her blood run cold. Hundreds of cases showed the same pattern. Wealthy criminals were being freed while poor, innocent people were being locked away. Key witnesses in major cases had disappeared without explanation. Some were listed as relocated for safety, but no one could find them. She tried to trace where these decisions came from, but every path led to dead ends. The computer systems said the verdicts came from the main legal AI, but the reasoning made no sense. When she asked to speak with the judges who had made these decisions, she was told they were unavailable or on special assignment. Zara brought her findings to her father. Emperor Corvash sat on his throne in the private chamber, looking older and more tired than she remembered. His once bright purple skin had faded to a dull gray. His 6 eyes, which used to sparkle with intelligence, now seemed clouded with worry. "Father, our legal system is broken," Zara said, showing him the evidence on her datapad. "Innocent people are suffering, while criminals go free. We must act immediately." The Emperor barely looked at the information. "Zara, you are young and do not understand how complex these matters can be. The Galactic Judiciary Council has served us well for centuries. I will not allow you to spread rumors that could damage people's faith in our government." "But father, this is not a rumor. Look at the evidence." "Enough." The Emperor's voice was firm. "Chancellor Vex has already briefed me on these cases. He assures me that everything is being handled properly. You will stop this investigation immediately." Zara felt shocked and hurt. Her own father would not listen to her. She left the throne. room feeling more alone than ever before. That night, Zara could not sleep. She walked through the palace gardens, trying to understand what was happening. The twin moons cast silver light on the purple flowers that grew only on the royal grounds. She had always found peace here, but tonight everything felt wrong. As she rounded a corner near the fountain, she heard voices. Hidden behind a large tree, she saw Chancellor Vex talking quietly with two figures in dark robes. She could not see their faces, but their body language suggested they were discussing something secret and important. "The princess is becoming a problem," one of the robed figures said. "She has seen too much." "I know," Chancellor Vex replied. "I have tried to keep her father focused on other matters, but she is persistent. We may need to take more direct action. The Emperor trusts you completely. Perhaps it is time for the princess to have an accident." Zara's heart pounded as she realized they were talking about killing her. She tried to back away quietly, but her foot hit a small stone. The tiny sound seemed incredibly loud in the quiet garden. All three figures turned toward her hiding spot. "Someone is there," Chancellor Vex said sharply. Zara ran as fast as she could through the garden paths she knew by heart. Behind her, she could hear footsteps and angry voices. She reached her chambers and locked the door, her breath coming in quick gasps. The next morning, Zara tried to act normal, but she felt eyes watching her everywhere she went. At lunch, she noticed her food tasted strange. She stopped eating immediately and secretly had the meal tested. The results showed a slow-acting poison that would have made her sick over several days before killing her. That evening, Commander Thane came to her chambers, looking worried. "Princess, I have received orders to place you under protective custody in the Eastern Tower. Chancellor Vex says there have been threats against your life." Zara realized this was not protection, but imprisonment. The Eastern Tower had no communication devices, and only one exit that could be easily guarded. Once they had her locked away, no one would hear from her again. "Commander Thane," she said carefully, "do you believe the legal system is working properly?" The old soldier looked at her for a long moment. "No, Princess, I do not. I have served your family with honor for 30 years, but something evil has taken root in our government." "Then help me," Zara whispered. "Help me escape so I can find the truth and save our people." Thane stood silent for several seconds, wrestling with his duty and his conscience. Finally, he nodded. "There is a supply ship leaving for the Outer Rim in 2 hours. I can get you aboard, but after that, you will be on your own." Zara, quickly, packed a small bag with basic supplies and changed into simple clothes. She left behind her royal robes and jewelry, keeping only a small data pad with the evidence she had gathered. As she prepared to leave the only home she had ever known, she made a promise to herself. She would find a way to expose this conspiracy and save her people, no matter what the cost. The last thing she saw as Thane led her through secret passages to the loading dock was her father's tower, where lights still burned in his study. She wondered if she would ever see him again, and if he would ever forgive her for what she was about to do. The supply ship dropped Zara off at New Carthage, a rough trading post on the edge of Valdris space. The planet was hot and dusty, with red soil that stuck to everything. Unlike the clean, organized worlds of the Inner Empire, New Carthage was chaotic and dirty. Aliens from dozens of different species crowded the narrow streets, buying and selling everything from rare metals to illegal weapons. Zara had never been anywhere like this before. The smells were strong and unfamiliar. The sounds were loud and confusing. She pulled her hood down low to hide her purple skin and kept her forearms close to her body. Most people here had only 2 arms, and she did not want to attract attention. She needed to find passage to another system, somewhere far from Valdris space, where she could figure out her next move. The problem was that she had very little money. Royal credits would be easy to trace. So she had only brought basic currency that would not raise suspicions. After walking through the market for an hour, She found the spaceport district. Ships of all sizes sat on landing pads, some loading cargo while others prepared for departure. She approached several captains, but they all wanted more money than she could pay. Or they asked too many questions about why a Valdris princess would be traveling alone near the edge of the spaceport. She found a section that looked different from the rest. The ships here were smaller and older, but they seemed well maintained. A sign in several languages said human quarter. Zara had heard of humans, but had never met one. They were considered a minor species, barely worth notice in galactic politics. She approached a medium-sized cargo ship called the Liberty Bell. A man was checking the external systems, running his hands over the hull plates and examining the engine ports. He had pale skin, brown hair, and only 2 arms, like most species, but something about the way he moved seemed different, more focused, more efficient. "Excuse me," Zara said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need passage to the Kepler system. Can you help me?" The man looked up at her with sharp blue eyes. He was probably in his 30s, with the kind of face that showed he had seen many difficult things. "I'm Jake Morrison," he said. "This is my ship. Where in the Kepler system do you want to go, and how much can you pay?" Zara told him her destination, and offered all the money she had. Jake shook his head. "That's barely enough to cover fuel costs. Besides, you look like trouble. Rich girl, running away from something, dressed in cheap clothes that don't fit right. I don't need problems with whoever you're running from." Before Zara could argue, she heard the sound of military vehicles approaching. 3 Valdris security. Ships were landing at the main spaceport, and soldiers in purple uniforms were spreading out through the area. They carried scanners that could detect Valdris DNA from 100 meters away. "Please," Zara said urgently. "I can explain everything once we're away from here, but those soldiers will kill me if they find me." Jake looked at the approaching soldiers, then back at Zara. His expression showed he was making a quick decision. "Get in the ship. We'll sort out payment later." Zara followed him up the loading ramp into the cargo hold. The inside of the ship was clean and organized, with everything secured properly for space travel. Jake led her through corridors that seemed narrower than Valdris ships, but somehow more comfortable. "Lucy," Jake called out as they reached the bridge. "We need to leave right now." A woman with black hair and Asian features looked up from a control console. She wore practical clothes and had the same efficient way of moving that Jake did. "What's the rush?" she asked, then saw Zara. "And who's our passenger?" "I'll explain in space," Jake said, dropping into the pilot's seat. "Just get us cleared for departure." Lucy's fingers moved quickly over the controls, talking to the Port Authority and requesting immediate departure clearance. Within minutes, the Liberty Bell was lifting off. Through a small window, Zara could see the Valdris soldiers searching the area where she had been standing just moments before. Once they were safely in hyperspace, Jake turned to face her. "Okay, now you can explain. Who are you really, and why are Valdris military forces hunting you?" Zara took a deep breath. She had to trust these humans if she wanted their help. "My name is Zara Valthik. I am the daughter of Emperor Corvash and heir to the Valdris throne." Lucy nearly dropped the datapad she was holding. "You're Princess Zara, the one who gave that speech about legal reforms 3 days ago. You know about that?" Zara asked, surprised. "Humans pay attention to galactic politics," Jake said. "We may be considered a minor species, but we're not stupid. Your reform speech was broadcast across the Empire." "Then you know I was trying to fix problems in our legal system," Zara said. "What I discovered was much worse than simple problems. Our entire justice system has been corrupted. Criminals are being freed while innocent people are imprisoned. I tried to investigate, but someone tried to poison me and then have me killed." Jake and Lucy exchanged a meaningful look. "Show her the files," Lucy said quietly. Jake activated a wall screen and brought up a series of documents. "We've been Tracking the same thing you noticed, he said. Humans have been keeping records of legal decisions across Valdris space for the past 2 years. We started noticing patterns that didn't make sense. Zara stared at the screen in amazement. The humans had documented dozens of cases similar to what she had found. They had tracked witness disappearances, analyzed verdict patterns, and even identified several corrupt officials by name. Their research was more thorough than anything she had managed to do with royal access codes. How did you gather all this information? She asked. Humans are good at seeing patterns, Lucy explained. We also don't trust systems that claim to be perfect. When something seems too good to be true, it usually is. Jake pulled up another file. We think the corruption goes deeper than just individual judges or officials. Someone has been systematically replacing parts of the legal AI system with modified programs. These programs can be controlled remotely to produce any verdict the controller wants. But who would do such a thing? Zara asked. And why? That's what we've been trying to figure out, Jake said. The pattern suggests someone wants to destabilize the Valdris Empire by making people lose faith in the justice system. But we don't have enough evidence to prove who's behind it. Lucy activated another screen, showing a galactic map. We do know that similar patterns are starting to appear in other systems. The Andromedan Republic, the Centauri Alliance, even some independent worlds. Whatever this is, it's spreading. Zara felt overwhelmed by the scope of what the humans had discovered. You've learned more in 2 years than I discovered with royal access in 3 days. How is that possible? Because we're outsiders, Jake explained. Nobody pays attention to humans, so nobody tries to hide information from us. We can go places and ask questions that would immediately raise suspicions if a Valdris princess tried to do the same thing. Also, Lucy added, human thinking is different. We don't assume that old systems are automatically good systems. We question everything. Jake stood up and began pacing the small bridge. Here's what I think is happening. Someone very powerful wants to tear down the current galactic order and replace it with something new. They're starting with the justice systems because if people can't trust the law, they'll eventually turn to whoever promises to restore order. A classic takeover strategy. Lucy agreed. Create chaos, then offer yourself as the solution. Zara realized that these humans understood the situation better than anyone in her father's government. Will you help me stop this conspiracy? She asked. Jake stopped pacing and looked at her seriously. Princess, if we're right about this, we're talking about taking on some of the most powerful people in the galaxy. They've already tried to kill you once. They won't hesitate to kill us. I know the risks, Zara said, but I can't let my people suffer while criminals destroy everything my family has built. I need your help, and you need my access to information that only a royal can obtain. Lucy smiled for the first time since Zara had met her. I like her, Jake. She's got spirit. Jake studied Zara's face for a long moment, as if trying to read her true intentions. Finally, he nodded. Okay, princess, we're in, but we do this the human way. No fancy plans, no complicated politics. We find the evidence, we expose the truth, and we let the consequences fall where they may. Agreed, Zara said, feeling hope for the first time in days. Good, Jake said, settling back into his pilot's seat. Because our first stop is going to be very dangerous. We need to talk to Ben Rodriguez, a former galactic law enforcement officer who was fired for asking too many questions. He's hiding on a mining colony in the asteroid belt, and getting to him won't be easy. As the Liberty Bell changed course toward the asteroid belt, Zara looked out at the stars and felt something she had never experienced before. For the first time in her life, she was working with people who saw her as an equal, not as a princess to be protected or manipulated. These humans treated her like a partner in their mission, and she was determined not to let them down. The mining colony of Rocky Point looked like a collection of metal boxes welded together and stuck onto a large asteroid. The colony had no atmosphere, so everyone wore environmental suits when moving between buildings. Jake guided the Liberty Bell through a maze of mining equipment and cargo haulers to reach the small docking bay. Ben Rodriguez lived in the deepest part of the colony, in a section that most people avoided. The corridors here were older and darker, with pipes and cables running along the walls. The air smelled of machine oil and recycled atmosphere. Jake led Zara and Lucy through the narrow passages, checking his scanner to make sure they were not being followed. They found Ben in a small workshop where he repaired mining equipment. He was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. His hands were stained with grease, and his clothes had seen better days. When he saw Jake, his face showed both relief and worry. "Jake Morrison," Ben said, setting down his tools. "I wondered when you would find me. And you brought friends." "Ben, this is Princess Zara and my partner Lucy. We need your help with something big." Ben looked at Zara with surprise. "The princess here? This must be about the legal system corruption." He gestured for them to sit on some cargo boxes. "I've been waiting 2 years for someone to take this seriously." Zara leaned forward. "Tell us what you know." Ben activated a small holographic display that showed legal case files. "I was a senior investigator for Galactic law enforcement for 15 years. My job was to review unusual legal decisions and make sure everything was legitimate. About 3 years ago, I started noticing patterns that made no sense. The display showed dozens of cases where verdicts had been changed at the last minute. In every instance, the changes came through something called Administrative Override Protocol. This protocol was supposed to be used only in extreme emergencies, but it was being used almost daily. Who had authorization to use this protocol?" Lucy asked. "That's where it gets interesting," Ben said. "The authorization codes traced back to a department that officially didn't exist. When I tried to investigate, I was told to drop the matter. When I refused, I was transferred to a desk job reviewing parking violations. When I kept asking questions, I was fired for failure to follow direct orders." Jake studied the holographic data. "These override commands, where did they originate?" "That's what I spent 2 years trying to figure out," Ben said. He manipulated the display to show a galaxy map with data flow patterns. The commands came from relay stations all over the galaxy, but they all traced back to a single source, a facility called the Central Processing Hub. "I've never heard of that facility," Zara said. "Neither had I," Ben replied. "It doesn't appear on any official charts, but I managed to track down its location." He pointed to a spot on the map in a remote region of space. "It's hidden in the Void Nebula, where sensor readings are naturally distorted." Lucy was taking notes on her datapad. "How did you find it?" "I followed the money," Ben said with a bitter smile. "Someone was paying huge amounts of credits for specialized computer equipment. The kind of equipment needed to run advanced AI systems. I traced the purchases through 7 different shell companies before I found the real buyers." He brought up financial records that showed a complex web of transactions. The money trail led to a company called Galactic Solutions, Inc. On paper, they provide consulting services for government efficiency. In reality, they've been building the largest computer facility in known space. Zara felt her blood run cold. "Who owns Galactic Solutions?" "Shell companies all the way down," Ben said. "But I did find one name that appears on several key documents. Someone called Commissioner Drath." The name meant nothing to Zara, but Jake and Lucy exchanged worried looks. "We know that name," Jake said. "Commissioner Drath is listed as a minor official in the Valdris government. According to our research, he's been involved in suspicious financial transactions for years." Ben nodded grimly. "I think Commissioner Drath is just a frontman. Someone more powerful is using him to hide their real identity. But whoever it is, they've been planning this for a long time." "Planning what, exactly?" Zara asked. Ben manipulated the display to show a timeline of events. Look at the pattern. First, they infiltrate the legal AI systems. Then they start making small changes to verdicts. Nothing too obvious at first, just enough to test the system. Over time, the changes get bigger and more frequent. And now? Lucy asked. Now they're ready for the final phase, Ben said. Mass chaos. They can control legal outcomes across multiple star systems. They can free dangerous criminals and imprison political opponents. They can make people lose all faith in the government. Jake stood up and began pacing the small workshop. It's a perfect takeover strategy. You don't need armies if you can control the justice system. People will beg for someone to restore order. But who benefits from destroying the current galactic order? Zara asked. Before anyone could answer, Ben's security scanner began beeping urgently. Someone's approaching the colony, he said, checking his instruments. 3 ships, military configuration, Valdris markings. They found us, Lucy, said Dot. Jake was already moving toward the door. Ben, is there another way out of here? Emergency tunnels through the asteroid, Ben said, grabbing a bag of equipment. But if they're scanning for life signs, they'll track us eventually. They moved quickly through narrow maintenance tunnels that wound deep into the asteroid. The tunnels were barely wide enough for one person, and the gravity was weak enough that they had to be careful not to push off too hard from the walls. Behind them, they could hear the sound of cutting tools as the soldiers forced their way into the colony. Ben led them through a maze of passages that seemed to go on forever. Finally, they reached a small chamber where Ben kept an emergency escape pod. This will get you to the outer edge of the asteroid field, Ben said. From there, you can reach your ship. What about you? Zara asked. I'm staying, Ben said firmly. Someone needs to make sure those soldiers don't find the evidence I've been gathering. Besides, an old man like me would just slow you down. Jake shook Ben's hand. Thank you for everything. We'll make sure your work wasn't for nothing. As they prepared to enter the escape pod, Ben handed Zara a data crystal. Everything I've learned is on here. Locations, financial records, evidence of the computer systems being compromised. Use it wisely. The escape pod launched just as the soldiers reached their section of the tunnels. Through the small window, Zara could see military ships surrounding the asteroid. Somehow, Jake managed to pilot the tiny pod through the search pattern without being detected. When they reached the Liberty Bell, Lucy immediately began analyzing the data crystal Ben had given them. What she found made everyone silent with shock. The scope of this conspiracy is bigger than we thought, Lucy said. They've been infiltrating legal systems across 12 different species. The Valdris Empire is just the beginning. Jake studied the data on the main screen. Look at this timeline. They plan to trigger simultaneous legal crises across all major galactic powers within the next 2 months. When the governments collapse, they'll step in with their own solution. A new galactic empire with them in control, Zara said quietly. Lucy pulled up more files. And look who's been funding this operation. A list of names appeared on the screen. At the top was Chancellor Vex. Zara felt like she had been hit in the stomach. Vex, he's been planning to destroy my father's empire from the inside, and my father trusts him completely. There's more, Lucy said grimly. According to these records, they've been developing military assets, as well as controlling legal systems, ships, weapons, even soldiers. They're not just planning to take over through legal manipulation. They're preparing for war. Jake set course for a safe system where they could plan their next move. Princess, we need to get this information to people who can act on it. But your father won't listen to you, and most galactic leaders won't trust humans. Then we need proof they can't ignore, Zara said. We need to find this central processing hub and document what they're doing there. That's extremely dangerous, Lucy warned. The Void Nebula interferes with most sensors and communication systems. If something goes wrong, no one will be able to help us. Zara looked at the star chart showing the location of the hidden facility. If we don't stop them, they'll destroy everything decent people have built over centuries. Billions of innocent beings will suffer under their rule. Jake studied her face and saw the same determination he had noticed when they first met. Okay, he said. We'll go to the Void Nebula, but we'll need help. This is too big for just the three of us. I know someone who might be willing to help, Lucy said. Dr. Maya Singh runs a refugee assistance program in the border systems. She's been documenting the victims of the legal system corruption. She might have information we need. And she's human, Jake added, which means she understands how to think outside the system. As the Liberty Bell jumped to hyperspace, heading for their next destination, Zara realized that she was no longer just trying to save her father's empire. She was fighting for the freedom of every being in the galaxy. The conspiracy was bigger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined, but she was no longer facing it alone. She had allies who were willing to risk everything for the truth, and that gave her hope that they might actually succeed. Dr. Maya Singh's refugee center was located on a space station orbiting a dead planet in the border regions. The station was old but well-maintained, with gardens growing in the central sections where families from dozens of species had made new homes. Children played in the corridors while their parents worked to rebuild their lives after fleeing the legal chaos. In their home systems, Maya met them in her office. A cluttered room filled with case files and holographic displays showing refugee statistics. She was a woman in her 40s, with dark skin and intelligent eyes that showed both compassion and anger. When Jake introduced Zara as the Valdris princess, Maya's expression became very serious. Princess, I've been documenting what your government's legal system has done to innocent people, Maya said, gesturing to the files around her. Families torn apart, businesses destroyed, entire communities forced to flee their homes. The corruption has caused more suffering than most wars. Zara felt ashamed as she looked at the evidence of her people's pain. Dr. Singh, I'm here because I want to stop this. We've discovered that the corruption is part of a larger conspiracy to overthrow galactic governments. Maya activated a wall display that showed hundreds of testimonies from refugees. These people have been telling me the same story for months. Legal decisions that make no sense, witnesses who disappear, evidence that gets lost or destroyed, but no one in authority would listen. Lucy shared the data they had gathered from Ben Rodriguez. As Maya reviewed the information, her expression changed from skepticism to amazement to anger. This conspiracy is even worse than I thought, Maya said. According to this data, they've been using refugee populations as test subjects. They create legal chaos to force people to flee, then study how populations react to the breakdown of justice systems. They're treating sentient beings like laboratory animals, Zara said, horrified. Jake was studying the refugee movement patterns on Maya's displays. There's something else. Look at where these refugees are going. They're not randomly choosing destinations. They're being guided to specific systems. Maya brought up a galactic map showing refugee movements. You're right. Most refugees end up in systems controlled by Galactic Solutions, Inc., or their subsidiary companies. The same organization that's behind the conspiracy. They're building their own population of displaced people who will be grateful to anyone who offers them stability, Lucy realized. When they take over, these refugees will support them because they'll be seen as saviors. The scope of the plan was becoming clear. The conspirators were not just planning to seize power through legal manipulation. They were engineering entire population movements to create the conditions for their takeover. Maya's communication system suddenly activated with an urgent message. A young human man appeared on the screen, looking excited and worried at the same time. Dr. Singh, this is Alex Thompson, at the Data Analysis Center. We've detected massive unusual activity in the galactic communication networks. Someone is preparing to send simultaneous override commands to legal systems across 12 star systems, when Maya asked. Based on the data patterns, within the next 48 hours, Dr. Singh, if these commands go through, every major government in the galaxy will face complete legal system collapse at the same time. After the communication ended, the room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. In 2 days, the conspiracy would trigger the final phase of their plan. We need to reach that central processing hub, Jake said. It's the only way to stop the override commands. The Void Nebula is 3 days away at maximum speed, Lucy pointed out. We'll never make it in time. Maya was thinking carefully. There might be another way. Alex Thompson works with a team of human analysts who have been studying this conspiracy. They're based on Earth, which has resources you might not expect. Earth? Zara asked. I thought humans were a minor species with limited technology. Maya smiled grimly. That's what we want everyone to think. Jake, I think it's time you told the princess about humanity's real capabilities. Jake looked uncomfortable. Maya, that information is classified. The galaxy is about to fall to a conspiracy that will enslave billions of people, Maya said firmly. I think classification levels are less important than survival. Jake was quiet for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he made his decision. Princess, what I'm about to tell you must remain secret. Humanity has been preparing for galactic integration for much longer than most species realize. He activated his communicator and sent a coded message. Within minutes, a response came back with authorization codes that Jake had never used before. We're going to Earth, Jake announced. And you're going to see why humans might be the galaxy's best hope for stopping this conspiracy. The journey to Earth took 18 hours through routes that Jake had never traveled before. As they approached the Sol system, Zara was amazed by what she saw. Earth's moon was covered with installations that looked far more advanced than anything in Valdris space. Space stations orbited the planet in complex patterns, and ships moved between them with precision that suggested highly sophisticated traffic control systems. How is this possible? Zara asked. Our intelligence report said humans barely had interplanetary travel capability. We've been letting everyone believe that, Jake explained. It's easier to observe and learn when no one considers you a threat. They landed at a facility that was completely hidden from orbital scans. Underground hangars held ships that used technology Zara had never seen before. Humans in military uniforms moved with the same efficient precision she had noticed in Jake. And Lucy. General Patricia Wells met them at the landing bay. She was a tall woman with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Her uniform carried insignia that Zara did not recognize, but clearly indicated high rank. Mr. Morrison, Dr. Singh, has briefed us on the situation, General Wells said. Princess Zara, welcome to Earth Defense Command. We've been monitoring the galactic situation for some time. She led them through corridors lined with displays, showing real-time information from across the galaxy. Humans were tracking everything from ship movements to communication patterns to economic indicators. General, how long have you been watching galactic affairs? Zara asked. Since before humanity officially made contact with galactic civilization, Wells replied. We learned early that knowledge is the most important weapon. We've been gathering information and preparing for the day when the galaxy would need our help. They entered a command center where dozens of humans worked at advanced computer systems. The technology was clearly superior to anything Zara had seen in Valdris space, but it looked like it had been designed by a completely different approach to engineering. Dr. Ryan Foster, the lead scientist, explained what they had discovered. Our analysis confirms what you've learned. The conspiracy plans to trigger simultaneous legal system failures across the galaxy, but we've also identified their backup plans. He showed them data that revealed the full scope of the conspiracy's preparations. They have military forces positioned near every major galactic capital. When the legal systems collapse and governments fall, these forces will move in to restore order. How many ships are we talking about? Jake asked. Over 3,000 vessels, all using advanced technology that we believe they've been developing in secret for decades, Foster replied. Zara felt overwhelmed by the scale of the threat. My father's fleet has fewer than 500 ships. Most galactic powers have similar numbers. They can't fight a force that size. General Wells smiled. Princess, you're thinking like a traditional military commander. Humans approach warfare differently. She activated a display that showed the locations of human vessels throughout the galaxy. Zara was shocked to see hundreds of ships in positions she had never suspected. We don't fight large fleets with large fleets, Wells explained. We fight smart. We've been placing assets throughout the galaxy for years, disguised as cargo ships, research vessels, and civilian transports. When the time comes, we can strike at critical points simultaneously. Admiral Lisa Park joined the briefing to explain the military strategy. Our ships may be smaller than traditional warships, but they're faster, more maneuverable, and equipped with technology that can disable enemy vessels without destroying them. The key is the central processing hub, Foster added. If we can capture that facility and shut down their control systems, their entire operation will collapse. Their ships will lose coordination, their override commands will fail, and their forces will be scattered and confused. Jake studied the tactical displays. What do you need from us? Princess Zara's royal access codes, Wells said. We believe the facility's security systems will recognize Valdris royal authority. With the right codes, we can gain access to their computers and shut down the whole operation. And if the codes don't work, Zara asked, then we fight our way in, Admiral Park said simply. But that would be much more difficult and dangerous. General Wells brought up the mission timeline. We have 36 hours before they trigger. The legal system collapse. Our ships are already moving into position around the Void Nebula. The question is whether you're willing to risk everything on this mission. Zara looked around the command center at the humans who were preparing to risk their lives to save a galaxy that had never shown them respect or recognition. These people could have remained hidden and safe, but they were choosing to fight for principles of justice and freedom. General Wells, Zara said, humanity has been protecting the galaxy without anyone knowing it. You've been preparing for this moment for years, while everyone else was blind to the threat. I'm honored to be part of this mission. Jake squeezed her shoulder. Then let's go save the galaxy. As the human fleet prepared for the most important mission in galactic history, Zara realized that she had been wrong about everything. Humans were not a minor species. They were the galaxy's hidden guardians, and they might be the only hope for preserving freedom and justice for all sentient beings. The Void Nebula looked like a wall of purple and silver clouds that blocked all sensor readings beyond a few kilometers. Lightning crackled between the gas formations, and electromagnetic storms made communication almost impossible. Hidden somewhere in this dangerous region was the central processing hub that controlled the conspiracy's entire operation. Jake piloted the Liberty Bell through the nebula while following navigation data provided by the human fleet around them, invisible to normal sensors. Dozens of human ships moved through the storm using technology that could penetrate the electromagnetic interference. Contact in 30 seconds, Lucy announced from her station. The facility is directly ahead. Through the swirling clouds, a massive structure began to appear. The central processing hub was larger than most space stations, with towers and antenna arrays that stretched 4 kilometers. The surface was covered with defensive weapons and shield generators. It looked like a fortress designed to withstand any attack. There are over 50 ships defending the facility, Jake reported, and they've detected our approach. Admiral Park's voice came through the communication system. All human units, begin the attack. Remember, we need to capture the central computer, core intact. The battle began immediately. Human ships appeared throughout the nebula, attacking the conspiracy's forces from unexpected directions. The enemy vessels were larger and more heavily armed, but the human ships moved with incredible coordination and precision. Zara watched in amazement as human fighters weaved between enemy fire, targeting specific systems to disable rather than destroy. Their tactics were unlike anything she had seen in traditional space warfare. "Princess, we're approaching the docking bay," Jake announced. "Are you ready?" Zara checked her equipment one final time. She carried the royal access codes. That might allow them to shut down the conspiracy's computers from the inside. If the codes failed, the mission would become much more dangerous. They docked at a service bay that Admiral Park's forces had captured. The interior of the facility was a maze of computer systems and data processing equipment. The technology was incredibly advanced, but Zara noticed that much of it was based on designs stolen from various galactic civilizations. Jake led a team of human soldiers through the corridors, while Zara used her royal codes to access security systems. The codes worked perfectly, opening doors and disabling defense systems as they moved deeper into the facility. "The central computer core is 3 levels down," Lucy reported, studying her scanner. "But there are enemy forces moving to intercept us." They fought their way through corridors filled with automated defenses and conspiracy soldiers. The humans moved with tactical precision that impressed even the enemy forces they were fighting. Every movement was calculated, every shot was accurate, and every decision was made with perfect timing. When they reached the central computer core, they found Chancellor Vex waiting for them with a squad of guards. The Valdris official looked older and more desperate than Zara remembered. "Princess Zara," Vex said, his voice filled with mock politeness. "How convenient that you've come to witness the birth of a new galactic order." "Vex, you've betrayed everything my family built," Zara replied. "You've caused suffering across dozens of worlds." "I've brought order to chaos," Vex said. "The old system was weak and inefficient. Under our control, the galaxy will have true peace and stability." "Under your control, the galaxy will have slavery and oppression," Jake said, keeping his weapon aimed at Vex. Vex laughed. "Humans, you still think you can change anything? In 10 minutes, our override commands will trigger legal system collapse across 12 star systems. Governments will fall, and our forces will restore order. Your little rescue mission has failed." Lucy was working frantically at the computer terminals. "Jake, I can't stop the override sequence. The system requires authorization from someone with higher clearance than the princess. Only the Supreme Arbiter of the Galactic Council can override these commands," Vex said smugly, "and he is safely under our control." Zara felt despair beginning to overwhelm her. They had come so far and fought so hard, only to fail at the final moment. Billions of innocent beings would suffer because she could not stop the conspiracy's final plan. Then Jake did something unexpected. He handed his weapon to Lucy and walked calmly to the main computer terminal. "Actually," Jake said, entering commands into the system, "there is one authorization level higher than the Supreme Arbiter." Vex looked confused. "That's impossible. No such authority exists." "It does, if you know the real history of the galactic legal system," Jake replied. The computer screens began displaying information that made Vex's face go pale with shock. 300 years ago, when the Galactic Judiciary Council was first established, the founding species included a provision for emergency override authority. That authority was granted to any species that could demonstrate superior understanding of justice and law. Jake's commands were accepted by the system, and the override sequence began shutting down. Humans have been studying galactic law for decades. Our legal scholars have identified flaws and contradictions that no one else noticed. The system recognizes our authority to intervene when justice is threatened. Vex stared at the screens in disbelief. "Humans are a minor species. You have no legal standing in galactic affairs." "We do now," Lucy said, completing the shutdown of the conspiracy's control systems. And our first act is to restore legitimate, legal authority to all affected systems. Throughout the facility, conspiracy forces were surrendering as their command structure collapsed. Without the central computer to coordinate their activities, the hidden fleet was scattered and confused. Admiral Park's voice came through the communication system. All conspiracy vessels are standing down. The immediate threat has been neutralized. But Zara knew the real work was just beginning. The conspiracy had caused massive damage to galactic civilization, and rebuilding would take years of effort. 6 months later, Zara stood before the Galactic Council once again. But this time, she was not a princess giving a speech about legal reforms. She was Empress Zara, having accepted the throne after her father voluntarily abdicated in recognition of his failure to protect the empire. The council chamber looked very different now. Representatives from dozens of species sat together, but there were also several humans among them. Humanity had been granted full membership in galactic civilization, with Jake Morrison serving as their chief representative. The new legal framework we are implementing today is based on principles that humans call due process and equal justice under law, Zara announced. These concepts ensure that all beings, regardless of species or social status, receive fair treatment in our courts. Jake sat in the human delegation section, wearing formal diplomatic robes, but still looking like the practical engineer she had first met on New Carthage. Lucy was beside him, now serving as humanity's chief technology advisor to the galactic government. After the session ended, Zara found Jake in the garden where they had first planned their mission to expose the conspiracy. "Do you ever regret getting involved in all this?" she asked. Jake smiled. "Princess, you gave me the chance to help save the galaxy. How could I regret that?" "Empress," she corrected gently. "Right, Empress. I keep forgetting about the promotion." They walked through the garden in comfortable silence, looking at the purple flowers that had been planted alongside earth roses and other plants from worlds throughout the galaxy. "Jake, there's something I've been wondering about," Zara said. "How long have humans really been watching galactic affairs?" "Since before we made official first contact," Jake admitted. "We've been out here for almost a century, learning and preparing. We knew that eventually the galaxy would need what we could offer." "And what exactly do humans offer?" Jake thought for a moment. Perspective. Most galactic civilizations develop similar ways of thinking because they all follow similar paths to advancement. Humans developed differently. We ask questions that others don't think to ask. We see solutions that others miss, and you're willing to share that perspective with the rest of us. "That's why we're here," Jake said. "Humans believe that diversity makes everyone stronger. A galaxy where different species work together is better than a galaxy where one group dominates all the others." Emperor Corvash approached them from across the garden. Zara's father looked healthier and happier than he had in years. Stepping down from the throne had freed him from the burdens that had been weighing him down. "Mr. Morrison," the former emperor said, "I want to thank you again for saving my daughter and our empire." "Your Majesty, I was just doing what needed to be done. Besides, your daughter saved herself. I just provided transportation." Corvash laughed. "You humans and your modesty. The entire galaxy knows that humanity prevented the greatest catastrophe in galactic history." As the three of them watched the sunset through the crystal dome of the palace, Zara reflected on how much had changed. The conspiracy had been completely dismantled, with its leaders facing justice under the new legal system. The victims of legal corruption were receiving compensation and having their cases reviewed. Most importantly, the galaxy had learned that working together was more powerful than any single species trying to dominate others. "Jake," Zara said, "what do you think the future holds for all of us?" "I think it's going to be interesting," Jake replied. "Humans have a saying, 'May you live in interesting times.' For the first time in galactic history, Every species has a voice in how civilization develops. That's going to create challenges, but it's also going to create opportunities that none of us can imagine. A year later, the first Galactic Assembly was held on Earth. Representatives from every known species gathered to establish new frameworks for cooperation and mutual aid. The Assembly's charter, written primarily by human legal scholars, established principles of individual rights and democratic governance that had never existed in galactic law. Jake Morrison was elected as the first Speaker of the Assembly, a position created to ensure that no single species could dominate galactic politics. His first act was to establish the Galactic Justice Court, a multi-species organization dedicated to ensuring that the legal corruption of the past could never happen again. Empress Sara served as the honorary president of the Justice Corps, working with beings from dozens of worlds to create a better future for everyone. The partnership between Valdris wisdom and human innovation became a model for cooperation throughout the galaxy, and in the quiet moments between their public duties, Zara and Jake continued to work together as friends and partners, proving that the best solutions often come from the most unlikely alliances. The galaxy had been saved not by superior technology or military might, but by the simple human belief that everyone deserves justice, and that working together makes everyone stronger.